First of all, thank you to everybody, the stragglers, the hangers-on for the last session. Really pleased to see there's still a good turnout at the end. I was told I was doing the graveyard slot, and actually there's still loads of people, interested people, to hear this last, hopefully very exciting discussion. My name's Charlie Haire. I'm head of business development here at RAL Space. I joined about 4 months ago, so this is all quite new to me. I did actually speak at the Appleton conference maybe 3 years ago when it was a virtual event. So this is my first one that I've come to in person, and I must say it's been great fun, really enthralling discussion, and great to see so many people coming together and such a broad range of topics talked about. This session is called "How do we navigate future markets for space?" Coming from business development, it's maybe a little bit more on the business commercial side, but I think we can touch upon other topics as well. I thought I would start, before introducing the panel, I thought I'd start with a quick anecdote from myself to set the session up. How relevant it is, we can try and work it out as we go along. But as a young lad, I'll say 14, it was probably younger. Most weekends and school holidays, I used to go out and help my dad. He was a precision engineer at his workshop. He'd get me working on a centerless grinder, pushing bits of metal through and through, and I'd say to him, "Dad, what's this for?" And he was right at the bottom of the supply chain, and he'd say, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, why not? Why don't we know?" So the next time I came in, he made sure to find out what it was. And he'd sometimes be working on parts for Sussex University for the F1 team, sometimes doing spindles for high-end record decks. And for me, I was like, wow, this is incredible. When I went back to school, I had a story to tell. And I think, you know, this anecdote for me, as I'm trying to say, has two reasons. One of them, feeling a part of something bigger is a real motivator. And I think the second part, linking that in to the space sector, what we do in the space sector is quite often a small or a large part of something a lot bigger. And we've heard today so many examples of much bigger things that we're part of. And I think that's a really strong message. And I think that the thing that I'm getting to is there always has to be an end user. There always has to be demand for something that we're doing, the little part that we're playing, developing technology, developing services. And this talk is a little bit looking at some of those end users and how we engage potentially future new markets and new end users, how we develop the community. As I said, this is the final session of the day, and the panel that I brought together hopefully can cover this topic well. I think we're all fairly new into our roles, actually, so and some of us new to the space sector, so maybe bringing some new perspectives to the table. But I think we bring a lot of experience. And one of the things that I'd like to look at is most of us in this room have to decide how we spend our limited resources. Resources aren't endless. So I'd like to have a little bit on how we're preparing for future demand in the UK and globally. As the space sector is becoming more commercial, I think it's always been a very global market, but we're growing international relationships, as we heard earlier from Rebecca from DSIT. So I'm going to move on to introduce the panel now before moving on to a few questions that I'm going to ask the panel. Then I've actually got a few SMEs who've been either through the ESA BIC or on campus to talk a little bit at the end to give some lightning discussions to add a bit more flavour to the talk. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce first Johnny Ward, who's the Senior Director of R&D at Spire Global. So if you have a couple of minutes just introducing yourself.
Yeah, sure. I assume people can hear me okay. Yeah, so my name is Johnny Ward, Senior Director of Research and Development at Spire Global. I'm relatively new in the role, so since August. My background is a mixture of academia and space industry, new space primarily, so launching nanosatellites and let's say higher risk, lower cost stuff. Spire Global itself is essentially a data and analytics company that build, launch, and operate its own constellation of nanosatellites. So we have over 100 now in orbit. Thematically, we work in multiple domains, but there would be climate and weather. And so we provide data through GNSS reflectometry, radio occultation. We're branching into now hyperspectral microwave sounding. And so we have an office just across the Atlas building, which is intimately connected to RAL Space and the technologies developed here. Then on to, let's say, asset tracking and monitoring. That's aviation and our maritime businesses, and that's AIS, ADSB, these messages coming from those assets, we collect them, but also multilateration itself of those assets. Then global security, so it could be RF geolocation or RF monitoring, so spectral awareness from orbit. And then the final kind of the business unit we have is space services. So that is essentially if you have a use case, but you don't want to spin up the entire infrastructure around building satellites and launching them, etc., you come to Spire. We can take your requirements and build your assets and launch them and operate them for you. And essentially what you get at the end is, an API or an email with the data done for you. So that's essentially it.
Thanks, Johnny. And we have Kaoutar Abousmir, who is the head of international strategy at the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm correct a little bit. I'm heading the international space strategy team. What does that mean? Seems very wide. My responsibilities is anchored in civil space strategy, and I provide leadership for a team leading on international collaboration approach across government. And I work very closely with colleagues both at the Department for Business and Trade, MOD, of course, Ministry of Defense, but also very closely with colleagues in the room right now in the UK Space Agency. Charlie has hinted, I'm one of those very new to our role. I can still say that. I started back in February, late in February this year. So I won't pretend I'm not a new face to this forum either, which feels like a great gathering of old friends. And so thank you very much for bringing me on board and welcoming me to this conference. To this topic in particular, I'm still new to space. I won't pretend to be an expert. I'm very grateful for the teams working with me. I'm not also an expert on markets from an economics perspective. I have a degree in philosophy. Thank God I have also degrees more relevant to this job, but I like to make a joke about this one. I have over a decade of working with foreign counterparts and multilateral fora. So I really hope I'm able to bring some different flavor to the conversation today.
Thanks, Kaoutar. And finally, we've got another John Abbott, who is the Chief Executive for the Satellite Applications Catapult.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. I think I'm the newest into my role. So I'm 2 months into my role at the Satellite Applications Catapult. We are just over the road. I'm not quite sure which way around we are, but we are on the map in the Electron building. We're an organization that help space technology perfuse into the market. So we're a technology innovation organization that helps to connect up industry, academia, government, and build great collaborations and see the benefit of space technology, particularly on Earth. For me, my background is also not in the space sector. So as well as being new, I'm also not from the sector. My background mainly is in digital and geospatial. So I spent some time looking after digital products at Ordnance Survey, helped them build their mobile phone application. I spent some time at the Land Registry as their digital director at Mimecast, the email company, as a director of digital products. And then most recently, I've spent the last 3 years living and working in Saudi Arabia, helping to set up a land registry. So working for the Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Public Investment Fund, the folks that own Newcastle United and lots of other things. So yeah, really looking forward to the discussion, talking about how we can make the most of the space sector and hopefully bring you some perspectives from digital and geospatial as well.
Thanks, John. So the first question is really directed to both Johns, and it's the space sector is on a growth trajectory, and obviously there's high hopes to keep that growth trajectory. Where do we see this growth coming from? Where are the future great areas of demand? Start with you, Johnny.
Yeah, I think from the perspective of in Spire anyway. It's essentially companies that are looking to develop a space strategy and leverage the bird's eye view, so to speak, for their own internal decision making. So again, that's where Spire comes in to support that, because if you don't want to spin up an entire division to build spacecraft and launch them for you, we can essentially interact with that company and give them the insights that they need. So I think there's a lot there, and that can go from precision, from agriculture all the way through to asset management in terms of maritime aircraft leasing companies, for example, need to understand where all their assets are. So there's a large market there, I think. And it's almost the same as applicable to, let's say, I would say countries that don't have the space legacy that larger countries would have, that had, let's say, a strong military influence and legacy space industry, but that still need to utilize space assets for their own internal use cases and needs. And that's something I think it's quite interesting as well, because again, they could just skip a generation and skip doing all the hard work of having to spin up all this industry, focus on maybe payload development in their university and small company networks, but then all the back end, can be done by us, for example. So I think there's some nice markets there.
Great, thanks, Johnny. I have got a follow up, but I'm going to go over to John first, and then back to you, I think.
Yeah, so I guess the way that I think of it is there's a real opportunity to take existing technologies and spread them out more, have them adopted more. So it still surprises me that when I drive up the A34, I can't get connectivity, and it feels like that's a problem we should solve in the UK as well as in other parts of the world. So we're doing work in Colombia, for example, with satellite backhalls and Wi-Fi to enable people to get connected that can't otherwise, with the Bank of Colombia, for example. Likewise, geospatial. So coming from a geospatial background, really making Earth observation data part of the day-to-day activities of many industries that perhaps are not using them well enough today, I think is a real opportunity for us. So with the help of the Space Agency, we've been able to get the GHGSat methane monitoring data made available to all of government and all of the research sector as well. I would hope that that's the beginning of something much bigger. So as I say, I used to work for Ordnance Survey. The government's put £1 billion into geospatial data over 10 years. So they're probably about 3 or 4 years into the spending of that £1 billion, recognizing that geospatial data is really critical for government making policy decisions. And I'd love us to have a similar sort of ambition for Earth observation data. Then there are some more kind of novel technologies. So we're really interested in phased array antennas, satellite communications on the move. So enabling, again, that connectivity, but now when I'm in a plane or a train, there's no way to escape from your email, so sorry for that. But it feels like really, really interesting area of kind of exploration. And then the really exciting things. So we're building big structures in space. So IOSM, again, is an area that we're focusing in on. We just spun out a company that's looking at space-based solar power, a company named Space Solar. And that future opportunity to build factories, data centers, power stations in space are really, really exciting. But for me, that gives us quite a nice balanced portfolio of technologies that exist today that we can get adopted more readily by industries that are not space aware, certainly don't have a space strategy yet, as well as the sort of future thinking technologies that are coming along the track.
Thanks, John. And Johnny, back to you from maybe some of your past experience and current Spire experience. How do you balance building on the strong capability you've got now and balance looking at new areas?
Yeah, and as a head of R&D, that's a tough question, because ultimately Spire is growing, and in a business you want to be profitable, and so to gain profitability, you can't grow your way to it per se. You can to some level, but at a certain stage, you need to take the assets that you have and gain efficiencies and get into like manufacturing synergies, etc. So there's obviously that aspect that we need to keep an eye on and get more out of what we have. But if you only focus on that, you'll stagnate and you'll get caught out by competitors, or you won't be where your customer needs you to be in, a longer time frame. So on my side, obviously, that's where I'm on that other side of trying to position us where we need to be in a certain time frame. Is it a 50-50 split? No, it's probably a 70-30, if I could, just guess it, where you try and focus on what you have and gain more out of it, but still keep your eye on the prize for a bit in the future.
And what sort of timeframes do you look at? Because I know from when I joined RAL Space, speaking to Richard Harrison about the massive time scales that he's worked in his career. What's the kind of...
Yeah, I mean, for me in our team, we would be looking at things like 18 months to 3 years. 5 years would be kind of, the absolute extent, I would say, but 18 months to 3 years.
Okay. Did you have anything else to add, John?
Well, for us, how we work is against 4 missions. So we've organized ourselves against these really quite broad missions: sustainable Earth, so thinking about how to mitigate climate change and adapt to climate change; autonomous Earth, so thinking about how space technology can enable autonomous drones, cars, and so on; connected Earth, thinking about connectivity; and beyond Earth, thinking about how do we get folks and things into space more quickly, more easily, more cheaply. Within each of those, we are placing bets. So we're trying to narrow the focus of those missions to say what's going to be most applicable in our case over the next 5 years, but also having an eye beyond there, particularly as we're working with folks like academia as well as industry. So again, for me, in an organization like ours, we're endeavoring to have this balanced portfolio of things that are relevant today, but also a view on things that will be relevant in 5 and even 10 years' time.
Great, thanks. I'm going to move on to you now, Kaoutar. Space, as we all know, is a team sport. You've got to say it. And I think we're seeing countries like the US be far more international in their endeavours. From the national space strategy stating how we're going to really increase and prioritise international collaboration. Your department sets that direction internationally for space, and of course we, RAL Space and others, look at that direction because it's going to push certain funding decisions and where funding goes in the future for funding opportunities and partnerships, international missions, etc. Can you tell us a little bit about what countries you're focusing on and a bit of a rationale behind that?
Sure, thank you. And if that's okay, I think I'll reverse a bit your question and start with why are we doing all of this, and then maybe say a bit more about the country in specific. I'll start with the big picture, and the obvious space is, by essence, an international endeavor, team sports, etc. Our national space strategy is clear. International collaboration is at the heart of our strategic approach to space in terms of future opportunities and partnership. So the focus for us is on fostering global partnerships to advance shared interests, ensuring the peaceful, secure, and sustainable use of space. And when I say collaboration, I mean at all levels: government, industry, academia, and international partners. As part of this, in my role, I've been convening cross-government colleagues to understand their priorities and drivers for international collaboration and explore with them synergies and opportunities. I think understanding the different stakeholder requirements is critical, and it's critical when it comes to enabling a strategy to be implemented. So very critical we get that right. That work rationale is also informed by wider work across our department space directorate to understand the specific capabilities we want to develop within the UK, and when partnering makes sense. ESA has been mentioned again and again. It remains the pillar for our international collaboration. We're a proud founding member of the European Space Agency, and it provides us a world-class science and mission with lots of European and international partner agencies. But beyond this, I think I'm coming a bit to what we're looking at. We need to remain flexible and respond to the emerging world events and diplomatic priorities, and have a clear rationale for our engagement that kind of collaboration. If I want to take the example of the UN or engage driven by shared priorities or compromise, but the countries we engage there might not be the same ones as we look to for a variety of reasons. The context is important for prioritizing engagement and partnership. Now, trying to respond to your question more directly, we have very clear wording in the National Space Strategy. We must grow and strengthen a relationship with partners such as the US, Five Eyes, with European states and across the world. We must also forge new bilateral partnerships, expanding existing one, etc. So clearly, prioritizing countries is a bit complex for us in space. We navigate this by having a clear methodology. I think that's key for how we engage and why, and this helps us remain agile when the landscapes change. In terms of specifics, no surprise, we work very closely with the US, Canada, Australia, and Japan, but we are also developing close new relationships with countries such as Singapore, the Republic of Korea, and some of the Gulf states as well. Our strategy is partly guided by, if you haven't seen it, Google it. The DSIT CDO Science and Technology Framework is a key document. But on space, our choice, which is also about aligning our trajectory with broader HMD strategies, not just that technology framework, but around boosting trade, innovation, and playing a role in shaping global norms and standards. I'll stop there. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions.
Yeah, I think I have a follow-up question, but I might ask it in a little bit. I'm going to move on to my third question, which is around kind of community navigation. And one of the things that I've heard at the UK Space Conference, and probably all the time that I've been in the space sector, is how the lack of engagement with the user community, or we need to be more user-centric. I just wanted to kind of understand what that means for in the first instance to both Johns, and how can we try and put this into practice in the space sector a little bit.
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
which one?
So, I mean, sorry.
I don't have this.
Well, I'll just say from the Spire perspective, we are incredibly customer-centric. It's really important for us. We're a private entity. And we try and essentially abstract away the idea that there's things in space collecting data, because the customer doesn't particularly care sometimes. They just want their problem solved. How we do that, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we released a really nice tool called the Constellation Management Portal or something like that. But what it is de facto a non-technical individual can access this portal, and let's say they have an interest in understanding what forest fires that may occur in some remote part of Canada. They can literally scroll to that part of the globe. They can select the payload type that they need, i.e. a thermal camera, and then they can select a time range that they're interested in, and essentially they'll find out what satellites are going to be over that region and what times, and essentially kind of book the time. And so that's something we've released, and it's really very user-friendly and user-centric. We have other tools like Deep Vision and a maritime tool that allows you essentially like Flight Radar 24, but it's for vessels that we collect. And so you go again, there's a map, you can type in the type of the ship you want, or the whatever code it may have, and find out its location. So for us, that's how we approach it. We try and like I say, abstract away some of that for the user. And then finding the users and engaging with them is done a little bit more in that traditional sense of getting out to trade shows, the typical type of marketing type stuff. It's still obviously a work in progress, and it's something we're actively pursuing, but it's really important to us. Yeah.
I'm keen to get your views, John, because I think it was you that might have mentioned it at the UK Space Conference.
Yeah. Well, I think I also said, so the first point for me would be it's important for the space sector to talk to other sectors. So maybe next year your New Year's resolution should be, I'm not going to go to maybe I'm going to go to a space conference, but I'm also going to go to some other sector, pharma, banking, whichever one. Pick your favorite conference and pick your favorite sector and go to one of their conferences to find out what's top of the mind of the CEOs, the CFOs in the pharmaceutical sector, and then start to think about how space can solve problems for them. Like I said at the beginning, so my background is digital, and I am definitely guilty of wasting a reasonable amount of money building things with software that people don't want, as is the whole of the digital sector. We've learnt in the digital sector, the reason that we learnt to follow a user-centered design process. It's sort of engineered into pretty much every software that's built in the world. Good example would be Gov.uk, so the British government website. They have changed the process and are very strict around how you build software in government to make sure you engage users before you're able to launch a product. And that makes a huge difference to folks that are looking to, I don't know, register for their COVID vaccine, claim their benefits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would love to see that in the space sector, that kind of it becomes part of our DNA, that we engage users and make them part of the process. And I was delighted, genuinely delighted, to find that at the Catapult we do that. So we have a user-centered design team, folks that are thinking about this sort of work, and we do that as part of our process of incubating and helping particularly new businesses. So for me, spend time in other conferences and make user-centered design part of the process, just in the same way that it's part of the process when you build a digital product, is absolutely the right thing to do. Because, you know, like I say, if I've wasted a reasonable amount of money, or the digital sector's wasted a reasonable amount of money without thinking about users, then gosh, the space sector could waste an awful lot more, given the numbers are an awful lot bigger than just writing some code and starting again.
Thanks, John. And Kaoutar, back to you again. I'm going to read out a bit from the National Space Strategy that says, together with local partners, the UK will also use space-based tools and applications to support the development of emerging economies and facilitate new markets. I was at the UK Space Agency previously, and I remember the International Partnership Programme, which was a fantastic programme for supporting the development of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. That was one such programme that brought a lot of engagement with countries like Malaysia, Philippines, Africa, South America. What plans are there in the future for the government for engaging with new partners and communities?
Thank you. Okay, what future ideas? Can I say that the creation of this is quite futuristic?
Yeah.
I think in simple terms, yes. It's a brand new dedicated department for science, innovation and technology, and it's to be the driving force behind HMG's commitment to growing the economy, improving lives of everyone in the UK. I see this as a huge opportunity, bringing together the technology of tomorrow under only one roof, one unique department for the first time. And we are starting a hugely exciting and new chapter in the UK's future, spanning from scientific innovation through commercialization to startup and scale up. And that is a step change also when it comes to engaging with new partners and space at the center stage of a wider international agenda for our department. Within this, cross-government coordination is critical. I've done a few hints here and there for effective international collaboration in space. That also includes working with space partnership in understanding and reviewing some of the opportunities there. To your specific question in relation to the IPP, I cannot not give the spotlight to our UK Space Agency, who have launched 2 dedicated programs to accelerate our ability to complement the fantastic international programs we can access through ESA, I mentioned, with new bilateral collaboration. So it's the International Bilateral Fund, which will help strengthen partnerships with strategic and emerging space nations, but also the Science Bilateral Fund designed to enable potential and foster prosperity. So that complements the work that the agency is doing alongside the Department for Business and Trade to promote the space sector and engage the investment community. And that is, I think, a continued fantastic example of how the UK engages new partner and different communities.
Yeah, I think I'm biased in saying the International Bilateral Fund is wonderful because I was part of the team that helped set it up. But actually coming to Row Space and hearing the thoughts of the wider community on incentives such as that is a really positive thing. But we're running out of time, and I want to give the three SMEs a chance to come up and give their input. But thank you all for talking. If you've got any follow-up comments quickly now, or there might be a little bit of time for questions at the end. But I'm gonna ask Azmat Hussain, who's the Business Development Director for Extend Robotics Limited, to do a quick 2 or 3 minutes. I'm gonna keep tight on the clock as well.
Right, thanks. Try to keep it within time. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me here. Thanks, everyone. So yeah, we are part of ISABEC this year, and has been an extraordinary year for us. Thanks a lot for the ISABEC team and to STFC for this opportunity. My background is across technology and development of technologies in different continents. So I've been working in Canada for 10 years and also in Asia in telecommunications, infrastructure development, but also in the last few years in robotics. So I graduated from the University of Edinburgh a few years ago. I've been working with the University of Edinburgh at the National Robotorium. And last year I joined Extend Robotics when I found that this company is developing a very critical component of robotics, which I found is, I mean, from the projects that we have been involved in and I've been researching about is how to enable humans with robots, how to enable humans to work better with robots. And this is an area which I find has been a missing piece for robotics. There's a lot of talk about how robotics is taking over the world and all. Love to hear that and work on that. But I think there's the iterative piece is that how we go there, how we enable robots to work autonomously. But it's not a clear-cut journey right now. So that's where we are. In Extend Robotics, we're developing an interface which will enable humans to log into robots from anywhere in the world and in space. And this could unlock enormous potential for humans to be part of this journey with robots. So this year we have been from the support from ISABEC and also heavily supported by the Satellite Applications Catapult to test our system for space deployment. And we 2 weeks ago, it's been 1 month, have been having a lot of conversations which were very helpful. We took part in a challenge to pitch our technology to Airbus. And yes, it was very extraordinary. I mean, we just got awarded a study contract to test this with Airbus for their rover deployment. So just at the study stage, but that's huge for us to be able to do that. But the idea is that in the future, we're looking at using this humans from Earth or in space to work in, say, the moon or in other planets, where the technology development with telecommunications, probably it will be a very seamless connection from Earth to other planets and moon. And people can be sitting here on Earth and managing robots, multiple robots, or building infrastructure in the moon, agriculture in the moon. Yes, a limitless amount of thinking and potential. So yeah, great to be here, and look forward to having discussions with you if you have any ideas in terms of that. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Azmat. And next we've got Dr. Thomas Clayson from MagDrive. He's their Chief Technology Officer.
Hello, thank you ever so much for the invite. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of MagDrive, where we are making spacecraft more agile and more efficient with new in-space propulsion. It's an electric propulsion system which gives effectively a 10-fold improvement in the miles per gallon over chemical systems. However, our system uniquely provides sufficient thrust to do the entire complement of a satellite's maneuvers. Our first product, the MagDrive Nano, is a 1U 1 kilogram dry mass, providing up to 100 millinewtons at 2000 seconds. over an order of magnitude above other EP systems. With this, we're targeting spacecraft for about 6U, up to a couple of 100 kilograms, where they'll be in an array. At the moment, we're a 15-person company. We launched our first payload, test of our power system at the beginning of the year, and are planning to get the full system into space, hopefully Q1 2025. There are 4 areas where I see space going and the space market going. Firstly, move towards commercial off-the-shelf products. Secondly, massive increase in traffic in LEO. Thirdly, space becoming a contested domain with commercial entities playing a role. And finally, the emergence of new in-space industries and assembly. So firstly, off-the-shelf components. This is something we've seen in nanosats, but as launch gets cheaper and people move towards bigger constellations, not only of hundreds, but then thousands of satellites, there's more of a drive towards standardized products, which are more similar, using things which already exist rather than building specific solutions for every single bird. Secondly, space is just getting mad in terms of the amount of spacecraft going up there. Space is big, but they're all going to the same place, which means that there's a massive requirement for high cadence avoidance maneuvers coming, and that's going to drive a lot of propulsion requirements, which MagDrive very much fits into. Thirdly, space is becoming a contested domain. The next conflict will be fought in space, which is mad when you think about it. Not with humans, hopefully, but the issue that NATO is waking up to is that China is no longer catching up with us. They are already ahead. They're practicing dogfighting out in GEO, and they have improved agility and mobility over us. So that's something which NATO and their allies are trying to remedy, and commercial is going to play a big role in that, providing solutions that already exist rather than building new things. They're going to be buying what they can. And fourthly, and finally, is the most exciting part, which is the emergence of entirely new missions and ecosystems in space. By building and assembling things in space for use both on Earth, but to use in space, will enable humanity to spread out into the solar system. So space-based solar power is a great example of that. Massive propulsion requirements involved there, but then going further afield, MagDrive is the ideal solution, because MagDrive uses a solid metal propellant, which is uniquely available in space. Hydrazine, other chemicals, very hard to come by. No dinosaurs in space, unfortunately. Xenon, krypton, very hard. Cryogenics could work, but very expensive. Solid metals, great. Find them everywhere. So we can use lunar regolith, asteroids, anything. Obviously, it needs processing. But if we do want to become a spacefaring civilization, we have to have other gas stations than just Earth available to us. Thank you ever so much.
Brilliant. And last but very much not least, Lucy Kennedy from Spotted, the CEO of Spotted.
Yeah, and I've been doing it for 6 years, so you guys have got a little bit of catching up to do. Yes, so hi, Lucy Kennedy, CEO and one of the co-founders of Spotted. We operate in the downstream space applications. We're based here on the site. We are a spin-out from a European Space Agency funded the Artis program back in the day. And we sat in the satellite applications co-space for many years, and we're still sitting on site and very happy to do so. So we provide satellite-based infrastructure monitoring services for owners of predominantly linear critical infrastructure. And it's a stone we've been pushing on for a while, but it is moving, which is really, really, really exciting. If we talk about commercialization, from my point of view, I get very excited about new stuff that gets shot into space and new sensors and new data. But in reality, there's an awful lot we can do with the data that we're already getting. So if I look at sort of data providers, it's around analysis-ready data. It's also around simple licensing and data access. How can we reduce the time between my client making a request to me and me having the data and the analytics ready? You know, as well as, what do I write down here? I can't even read my own writing. Oh, access to data. You know, if you want our service providers to have solutions that are ready to go as soon as you put your stuff up in space, we need to have played with the data. We need to have run our algorithms, built our models, developed our services already on some of that data. Otherwise, it takes an awful long time. And I think investment is a key area. We're really lucky in England. It's a great place to be building a space business. So there's much to be grateful for. We always ask for more, right? That's fair enough, right? So I think there is a lot of appetite for shooting stuff into space. And sometimes people forget that it's the service providers like us that are actually delivering the service and making the money and delivering the service to the clients. So don't forget about us. And there are an awful lot of funding programs for R&D and development. But sometimes it becomes a bit of a dirty word when you talk about commercialization. Can I fund a business developer? Sometimes that's really difficult. But of course, you can have a great idea, but if you can't market it and sell it and wrap it up in the right way, you ain't going to make no money. So there we go. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to see everybody here. It has some of the talk have stretched my technical capabilities a bit, but it's been a real pleasure. Thanks, darling.
Thank you. I think everyone will be pleased that that wraps it up for the day. Thank you. Thank you to the panel for this last session. If we can give them a round of applause, please.